See that date? Established in 1917. That's how long public defense has been in Memphis. What's public defense? Why should you care? Well, it all starts back in 1915 with a murder in a small town, lynch mobs, and a stunning courtroom verdict. It was Dyer County, about an hour north of Memphis. In October of 1915, a young mother and wife, whose name we only know as Mrs. Feuerstein, was found dead. This sensational headline appeared in the Dyersburg State Gazette. The assault so violent, her head was nearly severed from her body. Police dogs led authorities to 3 black men resting by a railroad track. One of the men, Robert Davis, had worked odd jobs around the Feuerstein farm. The other 2 men could not account for his whereabouts during the time of the crime, so he was arrested and charged with murder. But a murder charge was not Robert Davis's biggest problem. When a black man was accused of a crime in the South in the early 20th century, particularly one involving a white victim, white mobs would gather and attempt to exact their own justice: lynching. So Dyer County authorities kept moving Davis to different jails throughout West Tennessee for his protection. Finally, it was determined that in order for a trial to take place, instead of a lynching, Davis's case should be moved to Memphis. In 1916, Davis was transported to Memphis, the bustling capital of the Delta. Because Davis was accused of a capital crime, one that could cost him his life, he was given a court-appointed attorney. Samuel O. Bates, a criminal defense attorney and former state representative, took the case. Bates hired his own investigator and spent hundreds of dollars of his own money. His investigation uncovered what Dyer County authorities could or would not find: that Davis was innocent. Bates stood up for his client in what was then the brand new courthouse in downtown Memphis. Despite the fact that Davis was a poor black man charged with the brutal killing of a white woman in 1915, his court-appointed attorney successfully earned him an acquittal. Robert Davis left Memphis courtroom a free man. After this experience, Bates would go on to become a Tennessee state senator. Having seen firsthand the difference a lawyer can make, Senator Sam Bates introduced legislation that would provide lawyers for people charged with crimes in Shelby County. A bill introduced by Bates became law and created the Shelby County Public Defender's Office. It was the 3rd public defender office in the country, making Memphis one of the few American cities that provided attorneys to people who could not afford one and faced loss of liberty. Fast forward to 1961. A drifter, a man who had spent much of his life behind bars, mostly for petty crimes, was arrested in Panama City, Florida. He was too poor to afford an attorney. Had he been in Memphis at the time, he might have been given one. But Florida did not have a public defender system. Clarence Earl Gideon argued it wasn't fair, that simply because he was poor, he would have to defend himself without the help of an attorney. So Gideon filed a handwritten brief claiming this violated his constitutional rights. The case went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, where Clarence was represented by none other than Memphis native Abe Fortas. Fortas was a high-profile Washington, D.C. lawyer at the time. He was born and raised in Memphis and would go on to become a Supreme Court justice. But that's another Memphis story. On March 18, 1963, in a unanimous decision, Gideon v. Wainwright established the right to court-appointed counsel for all Americans. Following that decision, public defender offices and appointed counsel systems sprang up across the country. But in Memphis, nearly 5 decades earlier, the case of a black man wrongly accused of murder led to the creation of a public defender system in the Jim Crow South. Today, the law offices of the Shelby County Public Defender are powered by more than 80 lawyers and 40 support staff and managers. Sounds like a huge staff, until you realize those attorneys represent 35,000 cases a year, many with caseloads more than twice that recommended by the U.S. Department of Justice. Try protecting someone's constitutional rights when you have 900 cases. Some of the best trained lawyers from some of our best law schools in the country work in our office. We either need more of them, or, if you ask us, we'd rather have a smaller, smarter, and more humane criminal justice system, one that points people toward more productive lives instead of setting them up for a quick return to jail. We need more solutions like the Jericho Project, a jail diversion program for people battling severe and persistent mental illness and drug addiction. For this population, Jericho cuts the recidivism rate in half. Fewer people behind bars, fewer crimes committed, Fewer people facing prosecutors and judges, fewer people who need public defenders. By the way, the Jericho Project? It was created by Stephen Bush, Shelby County's chief public defender. This initiative has become a model for reform across the country. For nearly a century, the Shelby County Public Defender's Office has provided zealous counsel to tens of thousands of people. We are proud of this tradition and are dedicated to building upon it. And we need lawmakers, community leaders, and all of our neighbors to support the work of our public defenders. We need you to fight policies that land more people in our courtrooms and behind bars. The law offices of the Shelby County Public Defender. Justice for a new generation.